Emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. For atomic energy, none of them can stop the time. How long shall it be?
Hello, everybody. My name is Clifton Grant. This is my presentation on African Canadian history class on the article Rising Strongly and Rapidly, Marcus Garvey and the Universal Negro Improvement Association in Canada and the impact they had from the article. That was just the Honorable Robert Nesta Marley singing one of his famous and favorite songs, Redemption Song, talking about relieving yourself of mental slavery. Nobody but yourself can relieve your minds. A lot of people think that that is actually an original line written by the Honorable Robert Nesta Marley, Bob Marley, as the world is known, but it's not. It is actually from Marcus Garvey. And one of the many speeches he gave talked about many of the lines that he used, including One Love. And here's one of his famous speeches now.
No one inoculate you with evil doctrines to suit his own convenience. He began at home. To thyself be true, and thou canst not then depart, but no matter. Because God and nature first made us what we are. Creative genius, we make ourselves what we want to be. A great law. God in the sky be our limit, and eternity our measure. There is no height to which you cannot climb without the active intelligence of your own mind. We desire in nature, we can have through the creation of our own mind. Being scientifically the weaker race, you shall treat others only as they treat you. In your homes and everywhere possible, you must teach the higher development of science to your children. We have a race of scientists. Religion and science lies our only hope to withstand the evil designs of modern materialism. Don't forget your God. Remember that we live and pray for a binding racial hierarchy, whose only natural, spiritual, and political limits shall be God and Africa at home and abroad. God's blessings, I leave you for a while. One love.
And as I just said, there's the one love. I love that. No height that they can't climb without the activism in your mind, or the heights in your mind. Oh, just love that. Let's quickly talk about the author. The author is Carla Morona. She has the distinction of having the unique combination of having a master's in library and also a PhD in philosophy. Her PhD is from the University of Waterloo, finished in 2018, and her master's just finished last year is from the University of Alberta. So she was doing the master's as she was doing the PhD at the same time. Very commendable. She's a professional historian with experience in education, publishing, cultural organizations, not-for-profit, charitable organizations, and funded agencies. She's been a library professional for over 6 years. She's written some profound work, including a piece that correlates to this piece, the splendid work of our women have done, African Canadian women in the UNIA, and also she talked about the Black Cross nurses in another article. Another, important, impactful article that speaks to the erasure of Black history with the Black Cross nurses. One of the profound parts of reading and investigating Marcus Garvey is to know that the impact he's had on society with his what they call the Garveyisms. And I've quoted a few of them right now. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. Impact. Intelligence rules the world. Ignorance carries the burden. Truth. The pen is mightier than the sword, but the tongue is mightier than both of them together. empowering. We're going to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery. See, Bob didn't write that. For though others may free the body, no one but ourselves can free the mind. Mind is our only ruler, sovereign. Enlightening speech from 1937. And the Negro will have to build his own industry, art, sciences, literature, and culture before the world will stop to consider him. Liberating. Speaking of liberating, as the article talks about, Marcus Garvey's mission in life, or one of his missions in life, and one of his lasting legacies was the founding of the UNIA, the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League, founded by Marcus Garvey as a constitution that defines red, black, and green as the Pan-African colors. Red representing the noble blood that unites all people of African ancestry, the color black for the people, and green for the rich soil. The amazing thing that most people don't know in Canada is that the UNIA had a stranglehold, had a footprint, was a major part of Canadian society for a long time, especially in the Black community. The first chapter was opened in 1919 right in Montreal, and subsequently, just a few months later, in December, another one was opened in Toronto. At its height, it had 32 chapters across the country, from Nova Scotia all the way to British Columbia, and a membership of over 5,000 people. From 1919 to 1940, it played a central role in the lives of many Black people in Canada. A quarter of all Black people were part of the UNIA, including primarily a lot of West Indians who brought from the Caribbean their mentality of leadership, uprising, of independence, very importantly. The UNIA actually was very impactful in Toronto, my home city, because of the fact that it was unable to hold conventions with a lot of the legal issues that Marcus Garvey was having in the States. In 1935, 1936, and 1937, the annual convention was held here. So people from all across North America and the Caribbean came to Toronto to listen to Marcus Garvey speak. Unfortunately, in 1982, the office was closed. After he died in 1940, and even before that, with a lot of those legal issues, and some of the doctrine was now being argued among the masses, it led to the demise of the UNIA. But the Toronto office didn't open until 1982, but I was pleasantly happy to find that the Montreal office is still open today. Not so much for activism, not so much for rebellion, but still for social gatherings and bringing people together. 2741 Notre Dame Street, West Montreal. I hope to visit this summer. I hope you do too. So what are some of the themes and narratives from the reading? Well, one of them is liberation. And that is one of the main ideologies and narratives of Marcus Garvey. And he talks about the fundamental doctrine of Garveyism was his belief that racism was a principle that denied persons of African descent any political, economic, and social power. And the bottom line is he believed Blacks would never achieve equality in a society governed by whites. And that was one of the fundamental issues that we've explored in our course. Where does the Black man and woman place? Where is our place in this country, in Canada? The society that does a good job of presenting itself as a multicultural, welcoming society for all of us, with that North Star, but the institutional structures that are inside of the country favor some over others, and as a historical nature of racialized and marginalized communities, being over-policed, over-incarcerated, under-resources. That's what the UNIA was successful in Canada. That's why the UNIA was successful in Canada, because after the post-war, Garvey's message of separate Black nation really resonated with the Black diaspora. Here was an opportunity to have our own leadership, government, community, economic resources. What's fascinating to me is how close this ideology became to becoming a reality and would have changed the course of history forever. Another narrative is Black independence. Similar to liberation, but different. With Black independence, we look at you don't have to be liberated to be independent. In essence, you can find independence without liberation. West Indians especially have always stressed education in their quest for upward social mobility. And I was enlightened to find that Garveyism spawned the new Negro, who embodied the characteristics of the Black Renaissance during the 1920s, and who improved social status and that of our race through education, citizenship, and leadership. They really impacted the Black Renaissance of the 1920s, where a lot of Black people came up to Canada because of Prohibition, and the new Black and the new Negro was spawned. But one of the central themes that we cannot get away from this course that we've learned this year is the erasure of Black history, the historical erasure. One thing that struck me was this is my second time in a Canadian institution, and the first time 20 years ago, I never even heard of the UNIA. I had heard of Marcus Garvey being, from Jamaica and my parents, but no one ever talked about the UNIA up in Canada. It's like it never existed. And now finding that about me just leads to the more further premise of the erasure of Black history. This is just a testament to another central theme of this course, the erasure of Black history. The UNIA was an important part of Black history, especially for the vast majority of the Black population. They were leaders, organizers, participants, and brought many of the traditions of resistance and uprising to Canada. But as I've learned in this course, if the country doesn't want you, doesn't set up systems of infrastructure for you, and oppresses you, then it's not going to keep your history, especially when they never wanted you there in the first place. There are three articles that have connections to this course reading. First of all, Sarah Jane Matthew, North of the Color Line, Sleeping Porters and the Battle Against Jim Crow. This article was important. This article was important because it showed the dehumanization of Black men. Sarah Jane writes about within the Palmer's sleepers, Black men pose no threat to white civilization. Since porters uniformly were called George. They're stripped of their individual identity. The concept of racism and dehumanization of Black people was very evident in the Black porter world. If you look at the dates, that's 1820 to 1920, and Marcus Garvey and the UNIA came shortly thereafter that. And so you understand now why they were able to take a foothold in Canada and why their message of independence, uprising, racism would really resonate within the Black population. Also, Agnes Clasty's article, Race, Gender, and Canadian Immigration Policy was also very powerful and also had a connection to the course. She writes about Blacks were stigmatized for mentally, morally, physically, and socially inferior and potential social problem in Canada with immigration, the theme of racist ideologies and stereotypes, a common theme that we've investigated all year in this course. And lastly, a very powerful article from Adrian A. Smith about the legal consciousness and resistance of Caribbean seasonal architectural workers, who show the impact that our agricultural workers can have in our society, because they show us that they don't have many rights as people and they are exploited. And some people say it's another form of slavery, but they still have uprising and they still stand up for themselves, and they're battling to have some sort of rights in Canada. So in closing, I'm fascinated by the debate in this paper, the examination of Garveyism from many different perspectives, especially along racial, class, and gender lines. Whether you believe Garveyism was working class phenomenon or not, Future historians will give Garvey the credit of being the first Negro to awaken the breast of the common class of his race, the spirit of race consciousness, and that will be part of his lasting legacy. One last note, one thing that's very fascinating to me in my readings is the geography of Canada. And because it is a vast land, lots of area, very spread out, and very few Black communities, it's erasing the Blackness. Many people are erasing or assimilating to white culture. Many people are marrying into white culture. And this is the concept of race consciousness that Garvey wanted us to talk about, to preserve the Black race, to preserve the Black diaspora. But the geography of Canada is also something that needs to be deemed as a very impactful nature. Lastly, as Marcus Garvey would say himself, and he said these famous words and not Bob Marley: one love for all Black people. Thanks for your time.